His father is dying of terminal brain cancer and lives in Cleveland, about 500 kilometers from the man's home in Mississauga, Ontario.
So what are you doing there?
We're doing an interview about my situation and how I've been going to the United States my whole life, but recently, for whatever reason, I've been denied entry, and I can't find out why.
Keep on trying.
Inshallah.
We're not revealing his identity because he worries the stigma could affect his employment. Neither American nor Canadian authorities will tell him why he's been blocked from the U.S. 3 times since 2013.
I haven't really heard much back from them. I've written letters to them multiple times, and I'm really trying to get answers and just trying to get help.
It began when he returned to Canada in 2013 after a 2-year stint teaching English in Egypt and immediately faced scrutiny at the border.
Yeah, it'd be nice just to get a reason as to why.
He shot video of it happening. Shortly after, Canada's spy agency tried to set up a meeting with him.
And to me, it wasn't a coincidence. You know, there was something going on there.
He says he had met with CSIS agents years before as part of so-called outreach to the Muslim community. This time, he told CSIS to pay for his lawyer or no meeting.
For me to go out and spend thousands of dollars on a lawyer and meet with them when I know I didn't do anything wrong.
One possible explanation he was turned away at the border is a loose affiliation with this man, Damien Claremont, one of a cluster of men from Calgary who died overseas after joining foreign fighters in Iraq and Syria. The Mississauga man lived in Calgary around the time they would have been radicalized.
But just because you interacted with someone doesn't mean, obviously, that you're guilty or associated with that person.
But sometimes the people adjacent to radicalized men turn out to be even more dangerous, says this former CSIS analyst.
I was privy to investigations where person A was the primary person of interest, and yet it turned out that somebody who came in much later into that person's area of responsibility, if you will, turned out to be much more serious in terms of threats to national security.
The truth is the U.S. has the right to bar any foreigner from the country. A human rights lawyer says an appeal is possible, but the Mississauga man doesn't even know what he's appealing.
Without being charged, what is very disappointing as a society is that we have accepted that you are punished just by virtue of being a suspect without any transparency, without any information available.
Meanwhile, the only thing he knows is these are his father's last days.
I have faith in God and the Canadian and American people that they will try to let me in on grounds of compassion.
Each call, he's worried, will be their last. Chris Glover, CBC News, Mississauga.
So how unusual is this? Well, Canada Border Services Agency says it doesn't keep stats on Canadians denied entry into the U.S. or why, and suggested we call the Americans, so we did. The U.S. has meticulous notes about what happens at the southern border, but not for the northern border. The answer to that question was effectively, we'll get back to you. But this isn't the first time we've heard the stories of people turned away from the border without an explanation. Irwa Jutt's story sounds a lot like the one you just saw in Chris's report.
If the Americans don't want me, then I guess it's their loss. I think I've taken every step I could to clear my name. I just really hope that they don't think I'm a bad person.
We spoke with Jutt at his Windsor home back in 2015 because he'd been persistently blocked from entering the U.S., even though he doesn't have a record and had never been arrested. He was sure the problem was because he had reached out to CSIS to share with the spy agency that he knew some Canadians who had gone to fight with ISIS. Helping the security services, he said, was the right thing to do, something police have long encouraged Canadians to do. But he's sure it cost him dearly that somehow the Americans found out about his conversations with CSIS. So much for the career he had in the trucking industry with his dad. He had to abandon that.
If people know what's happened to you, that you can't go into the States, and that you were talking openly with CSIS, do you think they're telling their kids, you know, keep your mouth shut, keep your head down, don't talk to the cops?
Definitely. I know I have a lot of friends that are basically adopting that same mentality because they don't want to end up going through what I've gone through.
We checked in with Jutt today, and all these years later, he still has not been able to get into the U.S., has filed Freedom of Information reports on his case, and is still unable to overturn an American ruling he still doesn't understand.